Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Beitzah. We are up to Perek Gimel, Mishnah Daled. Today's Mishnah should be Leilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbai, and Eliyahu ben Burchai, Israelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen. And Avdir ben Chaim L'Chaim for the Refuah Shlema of Bacha bat Esther, and Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Chulei Israel. The following Mishnah discusses laws related to slaughtering a blemished Bechor on Yom Tov. The Torah sanctified the Bechor, the firstborn male offspring of kosher domesticated animals. The Bechor is given as a gift to a Kohen, who must then bring it to the temple as an offering. The blood of this offering is applied to the altar, some of its fats are burnt on the altar, and the meat is given to the Kohen and his family to eat. As the Mishnah says in Zvachim chapter 5, Mishnah 8, it is forbidden to non-Kohanim to eat. Like any offering, if the Bechor sustains a permanent blemish, it is rendered unfit to be offered on the altar. However, unlike other offerings, a blemished Bechor may be slaughtered and eaten anywhere without being redeemed. Since it is no longer sanctified, the Kohen may give its meat even to non-Kohanim to eat. It may not be slaughtered though until it has been examined by an expert to determine whether the blemish is indeed permanent, as the Mishnah says in Bechor chapter 4, Mishnah 3 and 4. And since we no longer have the temple and cannot bring offerings, a firstborn kosher animal today cannot be slaughtered until it becomes blemished, as Maran writes in Yorodea, chapter 309, halacha 1. We will learn below in chapter 5, Mishnah 2, Bezrat Hashem Bli Neder, that the sages prohibited the courts from meeting and issuing rulings on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon will disagree in this Mishnah whether examining the blemish of a Bechor and ruling on it is included in this prohibition. The Mishnah begins, Bechor shenafal lebor. If a Bechor, which became blemished before Yom Tov, but had not yet been inspected, now, since the animal was already blemished before Yom Tov, the Kohen anticipated being allowed to eat it on Yom Tov once it is examined by an expert. Therefore, the animal is not muktzah. However, if it first developed a blemish on Yom Tov, the animal is muktzah since the Kohen had no reason before Yom Tov to expect it to become blemished and usable on Yom Tov. So again, if a Bechor, which became blemished before Yom Tov, but had not yet been inspected, fell into a pit on Yom Tov, and the owner, the Kohen, is concerned that it may die there, Rabbi Yehuda says, Yered mumche v'yireh. An expert may go down into the pit and examine it. Now, until we know that the Bechor is permanently blemished and permitted for slaughter, it cannot be moved since it might be unblemished and therefore muktzah. Consequently, the expert must go down into the pit to inspect it, as the Gemara says on page 26a in Masechet Beitzah. So again, an expert may go down into the pit and examine it to see whether the blemish is permanent, because ruling on a blemish is not considered issuing a court ruling. It is no different from asking a rabbi on Yom Tov whether a certain food is forbidden or permitted. His ruling does not change the status of that food, it merely reveals what its status has been all along. Im yesh bo mum, if the expert determines that it has a permanent blemish, so that it now may be slaughtered and eaten, Alayev yishchot, then the owner may raise the animal from the pit and slaughter it. Although this Bechor was forbidden at the beginning of Yom Tov because it had not yet been examined, it is not muktzah because the Kohen was anticipating having it examined and permitted by an expert on Yom Tov. V'im lav lo yishchot. But if it does not have a permanent blemish, he may not slaughter it. Now, the commentators explain this statement seems obvious. If the blemish is not permanent, it may not be slaughtered outside the temple on any day of the year. So the Gemara, page 26a, explains that the Mishnah means to teach that this Bechor remains muktzah even if it develops a second blemish on Yom Tov that is permanent. Although the Kohen anticipated using this animal on Yom Tov and it now has a permanent blemish, his anticipation was not effective since it was based on the mistaken assumption that the first blemish would permit the animal. The animal is therefore considered muktzah, just like a Bechor that did not have a blemish before Yom Tov and developed one on Yom Tov. Rabbi Shimon, however, before we continue Rabbi Shimon's opinion, the commentaries add, he may also not move it to raise it out of the pit, because it is muktzah again in the case where it does not have a permanent blemish. He may, however, provide it with food to keep it alive in the pit, as the Rama writes in Orach Chaim chapter 498, halacha 9, and if there is a non-Jew present, it is permitted to have him raise the Bechor from the pit. We continue now with Rabbi Shimon's opinion. Rabbi Shimon says, Kol she'en mumo nikar mibod yom, any Bechor's blemish was not recognized to be permanent while it was still day before Yom Tov, Enza min hamuchan, it is not prepared for slaughter, meaning it may not be inspected and permitted on Yom Tov. Doing so is like judging a court case, which is prohibited on Yom Tov. Rabbi Shimon holds that since the sages decreed that a bechor may not be slaughtered until it is officially permitted by an expert, like we learned in Bechor chapter 3, Mishnah 3 and 4, permitting the bechor changes its status, making it like an official court ruling, and it is therefore forbidden on Yom Tov even to prevent financial loss. Therefore, even if the blemish is permanent, the bechor remains forbidden until after Yom Tov, and therefore muktzeh. That is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. That is in Rabotai of Mishnah Daled. We continue now with Mishnah Hey. The following Mishnah deals with an animal designated as an offering that died on Yom Tov without being slaughtered. If an animal designated as an offering dies on Yom Tov without having been slaughtered, it may not be moved from its place because it cannot be eaten or fed to dogs or be used in any way, and it is therefore muktzah. Now it is forbidden to derive any personal benefit from an offering, as the Rambam writes in the Chut Milah, chapter 1, Halacha 1, nor can an offering be redeemed after it dies. Therefore, once it dies, it has no use and is muktzah. However, the Rav explains, if an ordinary animal dies on Yom Tov and the owner expected that it might die that day because it had been sick before Yom Tov, then it is not muktzah since he anticipated feeding it to his dogs. Now, the Mishnah puts this case in the same category as chala, which is holy, making it clear that the animal discussed in our Mishnah is also holy. And that's how the commentaries add that B'ma Shemeta is referring to an animal designated as an offering. The Mishnah continues, this is actually where the commentaries get this idea from. There was an incident in which an animal offering died on Yom Tov, and they asked Rabbi Tarfon about it, as well as about challah, the portion of dough given to a kohen. We know when making dough, the Torah requires that a portion of it be given to a kohen. This portion is known as challah. It is treated like tirumah. It may be eaten only by a kohen and only when both he and it are tahor, as the Mishnah says in Challah chapter 1, Mishnah 9. If challah becomes tameh, it must be burned, but the kohen may benefit from it while he is burning it, for example, by using it as fuel for his fire. The Mishnah continues, v'nichnas. So again, there was an incident in which an animal offering died on Yom Tov, and they asked Rabbi Tarfon about it, as well as about challah shenitme'ah, challah that became tameh on Yom Tov, and therefore is forbidden to eat. We know the challah that is tameh has no use on Yom Tov, because the Torah forbids burning it or tirumah on Yom Tov, nor may a person feed it to his dog, for just as the Torah forbids burning challah on Yom Tov, so too does it prohibit destroying it that day in any other way. Challah that becomes tameh is therefore muktzeh on Yom Tov. V'nichnas lebeit midrash v'sha'al, Rabbi Tarfon was unsure of the law, so he entered the study hall and asked the sages there if these items may be moved on Yom Tov. V'amru lo, and they answered him, lo yizizem imkomam, they may not be moved from their place. Now Rabbi Tarfon certainly knew that these holy items should be muktzeh on Yom Tov. Nevertheless, he thought that perhaps an exception should be made to allow them to be moved, so that they not be left in a manner unbefitting their holy status. And the sages told him that no exceptions had been made. That is in Rabotai today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.